And g'day, we're live, and this is Property Realm. I'm your host, Scotty North, and there's a couple other guys jumping on shortly. But just to let you know, it's Tuesday lunchtime, so we're well into the week in Fortress, Australia, down under, and enjoying ourselves in the lovely weather we have in Queensland, which is pretty much raining for the whole month of October and looking like November. So that's fantastic. All it means is you've got to mow your grass lots and lots. Today's topic. Well, let's get the team over here. Where are you, team? I can't see you. There you are. Hello.
Good morning.
Oh, look. They're not Russell. They're all muted. They're off mute. There we go.
I'm off mute.
That's fantastic. All right, so we're broadcasting live, globally, and of course, straight into the Property Realm Facebook group. And if you're not a part of that, well, you should be. And make sure you find it on Property Realm Australia on Facebook and look us up there. And the lovely CEO, who looks like he's getting a passport photo because he's trying to leave Melbourne, he'll let you into the group and he'll have a chat to you about what goes on in that group because it's very special. Shh. Don't tell anyone. All right. So, topic for the day, CEO, over to you.
So today it's all about the different opportunities that investors are being bombarded with at the moment. So obviously there are a lot of different opportunities, not only when it comes to property, but where people want to put their money at the moment. And that's often the inquiry we're getting at the moment is where should I put my money? So Scott, Remo, I know you've dealt and worked with a whole lot of investors. What are the different opportunities that investors are dealing with at the moment?
All right. Well, that's a good question. And look, to be honest, quite unexpected, CEO. I had no idea you're going to ask that. So let's talk about the how they get to having so much choice, because it's fine to say, oh, there's lots of choice, but either some people find that there's way too much choice, and other people go, oh, I don't know, don't you just buy a house in your neighbourhood, right? So there's a big variance there. So Remo, how about you run through some of the different property offerings that are out there, like just a list, you don't have to go into detail with it, and so that people kind of jag their memory and go, oh yeah, okay, I didn't know you could do that. Go through the list.
Yeah, okay, so I won't talk about stocks and shares, which we spoke about before. Let's take that off the table, but we've got opportunities like obviously joint venturing and partnerships in residential, commercial, light industrial. There's the opportunity to obviously go and buy your own investment property, buying a PPR, and having that equity sit there and utilizing those funds. There's obviously the opportunity that some of the people that I've spoken to over the last 6 years have gone out and bought a block of land, done a duplex lot or a double duplex lot like we're busy doing in Nelson Bay, and so forth. So yeah, there's a bucket load of options on the table at the moment, and I guess we just got to determine what's the best one for our viewers today.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess the other thing too, like if you think about going to a supermarket and you go to the cookie aisle, there's a bunch of different cookies there, and unless you kind of know specifically you want Oreos or something, then you just go and buy Oreos, right? Unless there's a choice. The problem with housing is that you can have your Oreo, but it's on a different block of land, right? So it's not just the choice in the sort of the what you're going to do. You're going to do a reno, you're going to do a development, you're going to do a buy and hold, you're going to do a construction, etc. It's then within that there's more choices, and this is the part that gets compounded. Oh, well, I know I want to buy a house, or I want to buy just an established house for investment, but oh, is that a good street or is that a good area? And this is the sort of, so it just compounds this choice. Your Oreo just comes in a packet, right? But if your Oreo, you had to buy it from a certain spot and it had a different flavour or it's going to do a different thing, then you get a bit confused about Oreos, I reckon. Not that I eat Oreos. I don't look like I eat Oreos. I know I get that. I know what you're thinking. That man does not eat Oreos. But, this is a pretty good example of the amount of choice that happens there. So we actually need to answer CEO's question, and that is, the amount of choice that's out there and what have you. So, Karen, when we're looking for property for people, do you want to go through briefly the process of how we narrow down? Because a lot of people come to us to buy, say, a property, and that's fine. Sometimes that's all they know. But we have to get them from, oh, I've got 650 grand to spend on a property to, yes, this is the property we want to buy. Do you want to briefly take us through that, and then we can jump into the rest?
Sure. There's two main sides of it. One is if it's your own home. It's a very different set of criteria that we go through, and the other is an investment. So the easier one I'll say to do is your own home. So how many bedrooms do you need, and where do you need it to be? Do you need it to be near the kids' school, your work, or do you want to go surfing every morning before work? So it doesn't really matter too much all the other parameters of what's nearby or anything else. It's just personally where you want to live that we could get for you in that money. Unfortunately, most people want to live around, right on the beach, and 650 is not going to buy you anything on the beach. So sometimes there's that compromise of, well, this is reality and this is actually what your money will buy. And sometimes there can be about $500,000 difference. The other side of the coin is investment. What do you want it to do? The big thing in the 90s or the 2000s was negative gearing, but unless you're earning a heck of a lot of money, it's not great to be losing money all the time on property. So what do you want? Do you want to flip it? Do you want to sell it? Do you want to keep it? Do you want to rent it? And if you're renting it, which most people are for an investment, you need to find somewhere that's actually earning good rental returns. And that may not be in the suburb where you live. A lot of people buy an investment in their suburb because that's what they know, that's what they're familiar with, and they like to drive past it every week to check on their property. But that doesn't mean the suburb you live in is a good investment. It might be a good home, but it's not a good investment. So there's a very different criteria then on what the client needs to get from that property, whether it's a positively geared or just a rental income to gain capital gains. And of course, the rental income is one of the biggest things that you need. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's it. So all that stuff that Karen's talking about adds to that problem of choice, which you've alluded to. So Remo, when you deal direct with clients, do you ever find clients are overwhelmed with choice? And if so, this is sort of what we're going to touch on today. What's the process for narrowing down the choice?
Yeah, so typically when I speak to some of our clients, they are looking at not only 2 or 3 companies or organizations that do what we specifically do, they're also looking at other opportunities where, to give an example, one of our clients might be looking at us and someone else that's doing something similar, not quite, but they'll also be looking at maybe purchasing an investment property. But at the same time, they've also found a block of land that they like and they want to build a investment, a house on that land for investment purposes and rent it out. And then they're also looking to do something through their super. So you can imagine this particular person, and when I say this particular person, I would say probably about 75% of the people that I speak to have this whole gun-ho, shotgun rifle in the hand, all these things that they're looking at, and they can't get clear on exactly what it is that they want to buy, and then they get completely overwhelmed. So when I speak to them, I've got to narrow things down for them and start, and obviously these conversations go for a couple of hours. I've got to start looking at the pros and cons of each and put that on the table for them and let them make the decision on what's best suited for them. So we've got to go from a shotgun analogy to really narrowing it down to a sniper rifle analogy, right? So getting them clear on exactly what it is they want to, what it is they want to achieve. So the thing that we always come back to is reverse engineering. So we've got to look at what the end goal is. What's the purpose of taking a bucket load of cash, investing it into whatever opportunity to get an outcome of X? What does X look like? Okay, beautiful. I want to retire, or I want passive income for the purpose of not being reliant on my job for one income, or I want extra cash because we want to go on holidays and we want to buy this and that, and my kids want to go to a private school, and my daughter's finishing school. I need to buy a car for her this year, and. So we've got to reverse engineer that whole thing and then look at the pros and cons of each and understand what is the best opportunity currently on the table. So yeah, it does take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it's easy for someone to achieve that on their own if they know what the end outcome is and they know what they what they've got to work with. And as you said before, we've got too much choice. The analogy we had that you made before we jumped on the call today was you go to a buffet, you've got all these options, but then it's like, hey, I don't eat seafood. So all of a sudden your options become less. Same with property. You might have grown up with mum and dad being a developer, but they've only been invested in residential. But now you've got residential, commercial, and light industrial on your plate. Well, you've got to break it down and figure out which one's the best for you. Don't always go with what you know best. That's where education comes in. And I know we always come back to education, but it's key to understanding what it is that's going to work best for you and what you want to achieve. So if you've grown up with residential, it doesn't mean that residential is the best opportunity. Light industrial might be or commercial might be. It's up to the individual to then go and understand what those opportunities are and what the risks are, and obviously figuring out what your appetite for risk is, and then bring it in, hone in, and sniper rifle exactly what you want to do.
Yeah, and that's right. So, CO, coming back to your question there, the end result and the end goal should start to narrow down the choices. The problem with choice is that people look at the other way. All these things could hit my end goal. Yeah, maybe not. But they definitely won't hit all your other requirements along the way, right? And so exactly what Remo's saying, the opposite of that is that you think that one way is how to hit your goal, when in reality there could definitely be something else, like buy and hold is the only way to make it work. But hang on, well, what's this about doing a development? You know what I mean? Like, so there's that sort of stuff. So the narrowing a choice is should be driven by the end goal, as Remo had said, and then the criteria along the way, and the needs, like Karen had spoke about, and that starts to then form a more refined target in the market. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome, Scott. So, and thanks, Karen and Remo, for covering the different options there. It seems like from what you've both shared, Karen, Remo, it really comes down to kind of two things. Either they're looking at residential, as you were talking about, Karen, where they're looking at either positive cash flow, rental income, or capital gains, and then Remo, as they're diving into different property development projects, either considering what different returns are, whether they've got a block of land that they're looking to develop. But I guess one of the questions that would be helpful for a lot of investors who are considering all these different kinds of options are, and Remo, I trust you probably cover a lot of this, and I've heard you in many conversations discuss this with a lot of investors. And maybe Scotty, you can answer this as well. What are some of the risks involved and problems that come up when someone's, let's say, looking at different opportunities? It may or may not be for them, but either way, there are a range of risks and problems involved with the different options. What are some of the main ones that you come across on a maybe more current basis at the moment in terms of the options available for property owners?
All right. Well, let's look at, say, some of the key things that in terms of the development side, because obviously if you associate property and risk, it's probably one of the things that you think about, that development's real risky, right? So Remo, I might let you delve into this on terms of the conversations you have to clients around, the risk of projects and the risk of development, what have you, and then why they do or don't go ahead with that sort of option.
Yeah, cool. So obviously the conversations that I have most with our clients and non-clients is, and the two main options is always residential, buy and hold, versus commercial, industrial, residential, develop, right? Now, if I look at a buy and hold, well, everybody thinks buy and hold is not risky. It all comes down to 100% where you buy, the demand for rentals in the market. The other thing to consider is it's only a 12-month contract or 6-month contract. So every time those contracts renew, there's more money gone out of your income from that property. You've also got residents or tenants who look after properties, and then you've got the opposite side of them that don't look after properties. You've got a lot of moving parts in a household, dishwashers, ovens, stuff like that, spas break all the time. All these things cost money, right? So there's that risk. If the market...
Remo, what are you doing in a spa that's breaking the spa? Like, this is a G show, mate. So I don't really... I'm trying to work out why you're breaking spas. I mean, I haven't seen you for a while. Have you put on a lot of weight? Are you getting ready to be Santa this Christmas?
Why did we... What?
He's been in lockdown.
This was a completely one-track show into explaining. Now we've just gone... We're back there now.
So you go the grey, mate. You go the grey and the beard. Put the hat on, but then you can't bomb dive into a spa, Remo.
Let's get that. Yeah, okay. You and I should have that conversation offline. Anyway, so look, there's positives and negatives to, in most people's opinions, there's positives and negatives to buy and hold. For me personally, I don't see the reason in buying and holding property for the long term unless it's my PPR. I purely don't see the point of tying up $500 to $1 million into a property that's going to give me a small income where I could be using that money in developments and making 30, 40, 50, 60% every 12 months and just recycling those funds. So keep in mind what I said before. There's rentals. There's so many costs associated with a rental property when you're renting it out. It's a 6 to 12 month contract. They move out. You've got to replace them. It all costs money. With the development side, it's literally just recycling funds in and out of projects. Also, if you're going to buy within the light industrial commercial side, your contracts are typically set up for 5 years with an option to renew for 5 years and another option on top of that. So you're looking at a 5 to 15-year contract on a lease. The yields that I find in most light industrial areas that we transact on and develop in, the yields are slightly higher than the residential. Also, you've got one tenant in there, you've got concrete walls. The worst thing that could happen is someone crashes into your door or there's a bit of oil spilt on the floor. So, and there's ways to overcome that as well. Yes, there's a little bit more risk in terms of you only hold first mortgage on that development for a certain amount of time, then the banks come in, then you backseat second mortgage. But at the end of the day, it all comes down to appetite for risk and appetite for return and your vision on, what you want to achieve in life and so forth. And whether a property that's going to take, in COVID, 2 years to double in value, out of COVID, 20 years to double in value, or whether you can make 30, 40, 50% in a light industrial and then getting into that. Now, yes, there's risks. There's always blowout costs. There's blowout timelines and so forth. But if you partner with the right people and you constantly get an update of how your investment or how your project is performing, then that alleviates and eliminates most of the risk. Also, research and due diligence. If it's done properly at the front end, then it leaves very little room for error down the track on that project. So I'm always going to be pro property development versus pro buy and hold. I don't see the value in that. I never have. With light industrial, you create something from scratch and you manufacture profits. With residential, you've got to wait to accumulate, or you've got to wait for capital gains or growth within that property. So the two are very different. They both have their own types of risks associated. It's just I'm always pro property, not only because it's my passion, it's what I do. I understand it better than I do buying and holding a property.
Those are the risks that people talk about in our discussions, right? I mean, it's, the risk of this, the risk of that. Look, one thing you touched on was the first mortgage, second mortgage thing, but it should be interesting to note that, in an investment property, you're essentially second mortgage holder anyway, because the
Correct.
bank is in there as first mortgage holder. So, that's a pretty big, clarification in terms of aligning with the risk of the development side of things. So, I think it's pretty good.
One of the things I will add to as well, and one of the benefits I see in partnering with a development company, and regardless whether it's us or anybody else, when you're going and transacting with a partnership company or development company, you got to understand that you've got an entire team that's doing a lot of research and due diligence. And you've got experts, town planners, contractors, engineers, consultants, and so forth. People that are doing all this research to get that property from point A to point B. When you go and buy a residential property, it's you and a real estate agent. Now, you got to take that real estate agent's advice as gospel, right? That's what they're telling you. That's the only facts that you have to go off. And they have an agenda to sell you the most expensive property for the best price, right? That's their agenda. The more they sell it to you for, and the quicker they can get you into a property, the quicker they can move you on, collect their profits, and move on to the next couple or the next transaction. So it's one research person versus an entire team. Again, you got to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah. Okay. So all right. So CO, we kind of answered your question a lot there.
Yeah.
In both of them. Is there anything else that you have in that regard that you went?
I was wondering, Scotty, what's your perspective? So I know between you and Remo, it's always good to get another perspective on the types of problems that investors or property owners look at when considering different options. And thanks, Remo, for covering the different risks involved with property development versus buy and hold. So I'm wondering, Scotty, is there are there any other problems involved in terms of the different options that you find property owners are looking at the moment? What are some of the issues that you deal with?
Yeah, okay. So if we're talking about, let's take the development just to one side for a second, because it's kind of like a more finite time frame. If we're talking about, buying property for the longer term, right? The stuff that Remo doesn't really like doing, and that's fine. I've got my own thoughts about property. I think property as a business, which is what Remo talking about with development, is fantastic. And then when you make your money, you can park it in property as an asset, right? So there's the two different sides of the way I think. So when we're talking about property as an asset, the questions that come around are, how much longer is the price going to go up? What if they go down? Is this short? Is this a spike? Is this long term? What happens with the rental market? It's hot now, but when it's cold, can I get tenants? So it's all those operational and those sort of things. And what we talked about last week about planning for what you can and can't have a control over, right? So it's all a lot to do with that sort of things. Right now, the biggest questions are along that range of, well, how long is this boom going to last? What happens if it just stops? Are we going to get another lockdown? I mean, I don't know. What do they think I am? A premier? I don't know when we're getting our next lockdown because I haven't been to those meetings. So the point is that's very much. It's even in boom times we have people that are worried about when the dud times are going to happen. And in dud times, those type of people just wouldn't even want to do anything, right? So people always find themselves something to concern themselves with, and that's probably the biggest issue that we have in this way.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Scott. I appreciate that your perspective and where things or the questions that investors are asking you as well. I guess to wrap up for today is if we can have a look at what are the different things that investors or property owners need to consider, considering the different types of risks. I know we've mentioned some of the things that they can do in terms of narrowing down their options and focusing down with a sniper type of approach as opposed to a shotgun type of approach. But maybe if you could share some of the things that investors can do or at least consider when it comes to choosing what the best opportunities are for them.
Yeah, that's a good one. Remo and Karen, you're welcome to jump in here.
Okay. Plan, mate. I would plan. Like I said before, just understand what it is you want to achieve. If you don't know what you want to achieve, then there's no point in getting started. So figure out what the main objective is of why you want more money, or why you want more money. It all comes down to money, right? What does it look like? Figure out what sort of life you want to live and why you want to live that. Make sure that it's important to you. And then reverse engineer it from there. You've got options on the table. A investment property might take 5, 20, 25 years to give you enough passive income, and you're probably going to have to buy 3 or 4 or 5 to give you enough passive income to go and live that lifestyle. Or you can go and, you know, just coming back to what Scott said before, yes, I'm not a big fan of holding investment property. If I was to hold property for an investment as a business, I would, but it would be in the line of a light industrial. So I would go out, if I had enough cash in the bank, I'd build 20 light industrial units and I would rent that out, and that would give me around $430,000 a year income, depending on what that market's doing, right? But I know that those contracts are locked in for 5 years. So I am pro holding property, but it's got to be the right property in a specific market, and it has to be in light industrial. I wouldn't hold residential. So yeah, you just got to plan. You just got to figure out exactly what it is you want to achieve, and you got to reverse engineer it back to maybe 1 or 2 options. So if you don't understand something, doesn't mean that you shouldn't invest in it. Just means you need to go and do some research and due diligence, speak to some experts, speak to some friends and family, find people, join Facebook group communities, go to seminars, go to workshops. Like I always come back down to this. The only holdback that we have is ourselves. The only reason you don't know something is because there's other things in your life that's more important than your investment, right? If it's important to you, you're going to do whatever you can to find the right information, and the information is there. It's free. You just have to find the best resource that you can to find that information. And yeah.
And that's a good point. I think CO, what I find is that people gravitate towards what they're comfortable with. And so if they're comfortable with residential, which is the majority of people, right, because they live in a house, they don't even consider the other options. So, you know, Remo comes along and presents them an industrial option. Oh, no. Well, okay. Why? Oh, well, you know, this, that, you know, development. Okay, so is it a development risk that I don't understand, or is it the industrial side I don't understand? Because we can fix one of them, you know what I mean? And we can educate about the industrial, and then once they know it, then they can choose. Instead of just saying no, they can go, now I know residential and industrial, I'm still going to do resi, or no, I'm going to try this, you know what I mean? And it's that thing. So only once in my time have I had a client who didn't want residential because he was from a family that had always done industrial and car washes and stuff like that. And he wanted another investment in that way. And that's fine. Like, I wasn't going to convince him, but it was quite funny because my point is that his background was commercial and industrial, wasn't even remotely interested in residential. Most people's backgrounds are residential and they're only interested in residential. Do you see what I mean? It's because it's about what they're familiar with and what they feel comfortable with, and that's what they gravitate. So therefore, they're making the decision based on what they're comfortable with in terms of, oh, my happy place, I know it, versus what is potentially the best investment or the best action for them. And that's a mistake.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. So, yeah, I guess that kind of covers it. And from what you mentioned so far, to summarize, one thing to consider is one's certain level of comfort and what they're already familiar with, whether it's residential or commercial, and you want to plan. So knowing what you want, being able to reverse engineer that, and also consider the different information that's available. As Rima mentioned, the information's all out there and it's free. So again, it comes back down to education. So awesome, guys. Thanks. I think that really covers it when it comes to the different opportunities that are available for property owners and investors.
Yeah, no, that's good. We're at where's the time? See, I can see the time on my little ticker thing here.
12:30.
We're at time. We made it through another show. I can't believe we made it through another show. Isn't it just amazing? So there you go.
Yes.
No, we don't have any shows left. How many did I say? I put up in our message the other day. We had, was it 3 including today's, or 3 plus
3?
Yeah, 3. And look, we need to be careful because there'll be tiers. So we need to, guys, prepare, much like the toilet paper issue of last year. Our final show's coming up, so there'll be a lot of competition for tissues. So I'd say get in early and buy that for all our viewers out there, because they'll need tissues because they won't see us for a few months. We're off the air till February. So that's a bit sad, isn't it? So yeah, I can hear the emotion there.
Is it?
It's deafening. It's deafening.
Yes.
It's deafening. All right. You can find all this info and more in where can they find it, Sia? I forgot. Where can they find this?
propertyadvice.com.au, or in our Facebook group, as he mentioned in the beginning of the show. Join us at Real Property Advice, or the Facebook group is at Property Realm Australia.
There you go, Property Realm Australia. All right, thanks for everyone for joining us today, and thanks Realmers, and we'll see you next week, eh?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's
Very
good.
good.
Awesome,
All right,
guys.
that's it for us at Property Realm. As CEO said, find us on the Facebook page or on the podcast. I don't know, we've got to get the podcast sorted. Put in Property Realm if you want to hear our audio only instead of the video. I don't know why you'd want to hear the audio only. Quite honestly, this is what you should be looking at right here on the screen now. And thanks for everyone. And look, Realm, you got questions, asking Realm. We're always there. And of course, we love the chats that go on in that Facebook group. That's enough for us. We'll see you next week. I'm Scotty North from Real Property Advice. And, have a great day. See ya.